We also have who is the Somalia's special envoy to the United States, who will give a speech after the presents her vision to Somalia in terms of the U.S. policy towards Somalia. I would like to thank the Center for African Studies, Laura Joseph. She is a great resource for this community and for this area. Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you very much all for coming today and for being part of this conference. This is the Somalia Crossroads Conference. The intention is to bring together some of the most brilliant minds that think about Somalia and to come up with some recommendations that have been that can be applied to change the situation in Somalia. Now, before I get into the program, I want to move you all with the introduction of a very powerful young woman who is in the audience right now. She's a teacher by profession. She writes a lot. For those of us who came to think and give recommendations about Somalia, she will really incite us into thinking more. For those of us who are American policymakers, you will see tomorrow's American policymakers with a Somali couple. Cynthia Rahman, welcome.
Okay. First of all, I just have to say clearly before we start that criticizing others is easy and that anyone can do this, and even a child can criticize too. It is easy, and sometimes it's even fun to do this when you don't even have a clue. But to solve problems, to create something new, now that takes thinking and intelligence. So let's not waste time pointing fingers like we are children sitting on a fence. We are adults. Instead, we're walking around looking at who spilled the milk and who should clean it. But unless you have a time machine, there is no reason to make a scene. Grab a broom and start to sweep. Don't you see how many people who are already helping, who are so busy, who are not just standing there and watching the mess? And can't you see that it's already getting less? Don't you know that we are no longer waiting for imaginary leaders? We know that they are not coming. We know that that is only for movies and fairy tales, and Superman will not come. That time has passed, 20 years. Already the milk has filled the room and dried on the floor. But can't you see how it is so amazing that so many people are sweeping and helping in Somalia, when the world said we don't know if we can help, who said that they are just terrorists and pirates. But no, we are human beings. We are mothers and fathers, sisters, daughters and brothers, grandfathers and grandmothers. The 1,000 graves of Somali babies were human beings. Their mothers will cry for them for the rest of their life. While Americans have September 9/11 as their greatest tragedy, we have the famine of 2011. Thousands of graves of babies who just died from no water or food, and that's all. There's no people to arrest or fight with. It was only hunger and thirst, and that is why they died. We all mourn for their deaths, but we got up and we said that in their honor, we will help. The Somali refugees in Danaab, who promised to share half of their food with the refugees who were in need, although they were refugees themselves. The Somali mothers who answered the cries from the ones back home. The Somali diaspora who called and wrote their government. The singer who went to speak the truth conviction for refugees in Danaab. The Somali students who walked for hours in Columbus in the heat while fasting to collect money for those back home. The Somali couples who instead sent all their wedding money abroad to help those refugees back home. All the Somalis who sent millions of dollars through these money transfers that now people are saying that we can't even use. The Somali students in Africa who said that we will help. The Somali students in Arab countries who said we will help. The ones in the West who said we will help. The Somali students in South America. The ones in Asia, all around the world, all of these Somali students who said we will help, the Somali community leaders that used all their connections to give us a voice, the Somali teachers in Somalia who turned his school into a refuge, the Somali sheikh who turned his orphanage into a feeding center, the doctor who turned her clinic into a camp, all of the Somali women who turned their kitchens into feeding centers, and all of the youth in Somalia who were always used for war and they said no more. The Somali mothers who also stood at their son's decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the Ohio State University, the Mershon Center, and certainly the Center for African Studies here for assisting and cooperating in arranging this opportunity for me and for Matt, and for all of you to have a conversation, and a dialogue, and a discussion, sometimes a very vigorous discussion and disagreement, perhaps over a very important topic, which is how we all together can somehow find a way forward for the country of Somalia and bring peace and stability to a country that is where it's long overdue. So what I would like to talk about a little bit is, as you no doubt have heard, it has been previewed today in some of our sessions, a little bit about the dual track policy, which I know has will get a lot of attention from both sides. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing as the U.S. government with Amazon, what we've done on the humanitarian side, and where we think things are headed. And then I look forward to hearing from our other speaker, and then I assume we will have questions and answers. So we'll have an opportunity to have a little bit of a discussion. And I can assure you that we'll be listening to everything that we hear here, and we will be taking this back. Part of the policy process is to hear and think about what we are doing, hear what people's impressions of. So ultimately, let me start by saying that our overall objective in Somalia really is to help find a way to create a stable Somalia that is at peace with itself and with its neighbors. That is in everyone's interest, the people of Somalia, the people in the region, and the people of the world, to see that development after so many years. There are three critical considerations that guide our efforts in Somalia. First, we do believe that the Somalis, the regional actors, the states in the region, and the international community more broadly, including the international organizations like the United Nations, all need to have a role to play, because the Somalis themselves, despite the fact that they need to have a significant role in this, will need assistance from others to help them move forward. But we do believe firmly that the Somalis themselves must be part of the solution and part of the process. And we recognize that achieving stability in Somalia will be a very long and difficult process, because any durable solution will have to be viewed as acceptable by the Somalis themselves. The strategic framework, as you know, for our overall strategy for Somalia is our dual track policy. Let me explain briefly what, in our view, the dual track policy is, and then we'll move on from there. Track 1, through political, financial, and development assistance to the transitional federal government, seeks to build the institutional foundation for a durable, responsive central Somali government. Our ongoing support for the African Union mission in Somalia, or AMISOM, aims to improve the security situation and thereby create some degree of political space where stabilization efforts and political progress can take place. Because it's very difficult to build any kind of stability if you don't have security. I think we would all agree that that's a critical component. AMISOM has supported the transitional federal government by taking control of nearly all of Mogadishu over the last over the last year, and that is progress. There's still much more to be done, and the security situation in Mogadishu is not perhaps ideal or where we would like it to be, but it's definitely better than where it was a year ago. So we have to keep that in perspective. In Track 2, we support Somali entities that share our vision for Somalia. We will support clan-based groupings, regional entities, and in some instances non-TFG political movements that reject extremism and that are really ready to work towards stability and security. Among our efforts on Track 1, we work with the transitional federal government to help rebuild the security sector. That includes not just the creation of a national security force, but to look at policing efforts. Because again, not just in Mogadishu, but ultimately out in the regions as well. You need to have those security forces, police, to ensure that people in towns and villages have security themselves. We have begun several projects also in Somaliland and Puntland through our Transition Initiatives for Stabilization program, which we're looking to also expand into other parts of Somalia as conditions permit. These projects are geared towards solving local problems and helping communities at the very basic level. They involve local governments, local leaders, and civil society to help build a more self-sustaining approach to instill local authorities and governance more generally with legitimacy in the area. The dual track does not seek to divide Somalia into pieces that can be governed by anyone with a flag and a title. We want a unified, stable Somalia at peace with itself and its neighbors, as I said at the outset. Not a balkanized conglomeration of tiny states that have no prospect of being able to support themselves or to provide security for their citizens. The finish line for dual track merges the two tracks that we are working as one. This stable Somalia at peace with itself. But we are not looking to try to prescribe what that state looks like in terms of the specifics of the institutions that will govern it. Yes, there are proposals out there. There is the roadmap out there that set up possible ways forward. But at the end of the day, to create those structures and institutions and cement them in place, that will have to be up to the Somalis to work out among themselves what makes most sense. We've already begun to see, we believe we've begun to see our approach to Somalia start to bear fruit. We think that the roadmap that has been signed also offers a way forward. Again, the details are what will govern the process. The important thing is that there is a way mapped out that at least identifies what sorts of steps need to be taken. As how those steps are taken and how they are translated will be the critical piece as we go forward. The roadmap, we believe, was a milestone and offers a way forward. Again, there are pieces that the details have to be worked out, and we have to see how much progress the political players, not just the transitional federal government, but other actors as well, move forward in meeting the requirements of that roadmap. This is a process that began as well within the context of IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which led to the Djibouti Agreement and the Kampala Accord, which was something that, as we know, was a bit unanticipated when it occurred last year, but did provide some additional time to help try to move the pieces into place to spur some political progress. Notably, the roadmap did bring together the TFG with some of the regional authorities. there is still more that needs to be done in this regard. And we've had this conversation with our colleagues in Mogadishu and the representatives of the government, that they need to reach out not just to those regional authorities, but to civil society groups, to women's groups, to other actors who all need to be part of the process as we move forward. The December Garowe Conference provides also at least some agreement on some principles. I understand that there is discussion about the actual content of those principles, but it's a starting point. There was an opportunity to sit down and have that discussion. There need to be more discussions, and there needs to be more and more involvement of wider and wider groups of people. We understand that neither the Somalis nor the international community, with our efforts and support to the Somalis, will achieve our shared aims overnight. But one thing is clear: half measures that prolong the political stagnation and fragmentation are not acceptable. The London conference that the British government will be hosting next month gives a small group of the international community and Somali actors and some other countries, some newcomers to the process, Turkey and others, who are interested in trying to be supportive of a process forward, will give us a chance to evaluate how things look in Somalia, where the progress is, and find out how we can identify those players who are serious about pushing forward to the goal line. On the other hand, we do, as the United States, condemn those in the transitional federal government or in other organizations or entities who are going to sacrifice this opportunity for any sort of progress for personal gain. And we are going to work with all partners who are interested in taking steps to ensure that any spoilers inside the TFG or inside other entities or partners in the process who try to derail the political process. Among other things, spoilers could find themselves subject to things such as asset freezes and travel bans under the existing UN Security Council resolutions. We want to show those who wish to further delay progress towards stability and security in Somalia that this is not going to be an acceptable way forward. Let me talk a little bit just about the security situation as it stands now, which of course, as I'm sure you are all aware, has changed significantly in the last few months with the withdrawal of Al-Shabaab from Mogadishu, the entry of Kenya into southern Somalia, and most recently the Ethiopian incursion into western Somalia. AMISOM itself, we have been a large supporter with the United States government, more specifically the Department of State, that funds a lot of the training and support for the forces that are fighting in AMISOM, have done a very good job. The Ugandans and the Burundian forces who are there have put themselves at risk to try to carve out, again, some space inside Mogadishu to allow a political process to take hold. We are up to about 10,000 forces in Mogadishu. As you are no doubt aware, the African Union is engaged in discussions and finalizing details for how AMISOM might enlarge itself and move to other parts of the country to try to secure territory, again, to allow to develop some security and safety for the citizens in those areas, which will also then, we hope, allow delivery of humanitarian assistance, which has been difficult into some parts of the country over the last year. On the humanitarian side, we, as the United States, were the largest responder to the appeal as a result of the famine and the drought in the Horn of Africa, more generally and specifically to Somalia. The United States government gave over $200 million to provide humanitarian assistance to Somalia alone. $700 million for the Horn of Africa. Some of that is also money for Somali refugees in the Dadaab camp. So it's a large amount of money. But we are also focused on looking at how we move out of the transition from emergency assistance to longer-term stability on the livelihood side. But we also need that security and safety and stability piece in order to pursue those kinds of programs more robustly. So we all understand that providing humanitarian assistance year on year is not the way forward. No one wants to live like that. They want the opportunity to have a livelihood, to have schools for their children, and to have opportunities for education and jobs. But nonetheless, unfortunately, humanitarian crisis is a factor in the Horn of Africa. So we believe that despite the criticisms that have appeared recently, that in fact we as the United States, that our response was about as robust as it could have been, given the constraints on the ability to deliver assistance into some parts of the country. We continue to be committed to providing additional assistance over the course of the year and as the emergency continues. Before I finish, I just would like to give you a charge and a chance to make a difference in the ongoing crisis. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop there. I think we'll wait just 3 stages.
Now, I would like to call to the podium Mr. Abubakar Arman, Somalia's Special Envoy to the United States. Abubakar is not just a representative of Somalia, but an advocate and an activist for the Somalia cause in every respect that can be imagined, from the local to the national to the international levels. And welcome, Abubakar.
First, let me greet you with the Abrahamic greeting, peace, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. I see a lot of familiar faces, some locals, and I haven't seen for a while, and some from out of town. First, I would like to acknowledge the words that was said by Cynthia, which is very inspiring. I'm grateful. It reminds me of, fills my heart with hope that the next generation is going to be our future leaders and people that will really pull our country out of its current misery. Having said that, I want to start by saying 2 things. Every complex issue, and this one is certainly qualified as a complex issue, including our relationship, U.S.-Somali relationship. 2 things are very crucial. One is the context information provided. The other one is the perception. In this case, I want to provide you some context so we will all be on the same page as far as the relationship is concerned. And then the perception from in our case, depending where one stands. There are a lot of supporters for the U.S. policy towards Somalia, and there are a lot who are against it. And then you will be the judge. Because now diplomacy had changed. Diplomacy is now in the marketplace of ideas. People are debating differently. Not only behind the closed doors where people can talk about their differences, but they're bringing it out there where people can participate and can make a difference and correct others where they're wrong. Hopefully in that process we'll reach a win-win situation for both countries. Now, starting with the context. Somalis are indebted to the U.S. in every aspect. In 1992, everyone in the world knows what happened. Operation Restore Hope. Everyone talks about it, from the young to the old. Those who lived through it, those who have heard about it. Then after that, of course, the tragedy of Black Hawk Down in 1993. And then after that, in 1994, U.S. left Somalia. And it was left its own. And all the affairs, as far as U.S. was concerned, and the international community in general, was outsourced to our neighbor, Ethiopia. And then came 2006, the rise of the Islamic Courts Union. It had a popular support because it really gave people hope. And it got rid of the warlords. Despite all that, the popularity that it had, it was misread primarily because it was born, that movement was born at a time of paranoia. International paranoia, not only in the U.S., but everywhere. Extremism. Everyone was expecting these were the worst thing to happen. So getting rid of these guys would be the best thing to do. And then from that, of course, was born what I referred to as, in one of my previous articles before my position, Operation Dungeon. The CIA's operation in Somalia, partnering with the hated warlords in order to capture these Islamists who are extremists. And we know the rest of the story, because these guys were turning in individuals from minority community to get $150,000 that was paid to them by the CIA. That was not seen favorably. Yet still, America was rated high on the popularity among other nations. A good friend that was there to assist on the humanitarian and every front that Dr. Mala just spoke of. After that, of course, came the Ethiopian occupation. The end of 2006, U.S. lent tacit support to that movement. Although there was a difference of opinion within the administration itself, at the end, there was a support, U.S. support to that invention. And TFG was supported through that process. So the U.S. was seen siding with the wrong people. Siding with the wrong people. Then came the dual-track policy that Dr. Malak just spoke of. The dual-track policy, I belong to the ones that are critical of that policy, because I do believe that it's neither good for the U.S. nor it is good for Somalia. Why do I say that? Well, let me just go through a few points here. Number one is, first of all, it undermines the central government, the importance of the central government. And when you have a tribal society, and you provide an opportunity, the mightiest nation on the face of the earth is going to engage them at any level, at the clan level. Anyone who studied the clan system will tell you there is no end to that process. It goes to the lowest common denominator. Those who are on the same side now are going to turn into 10 different people afterwards. And the dual track, of course, provided an opportunity for each of those people who were either speaking in the name of the clan or region or whatever coverage or camouflage it's given, to come to the table as a statehood. And that's where the problem starts. Currently, Somalia has roughly, it depends on who you ask, some would say higher 20s, the others roughly about 40 presidents. I lost count, roughly around 25. So either way it goes. 5 presidents or 40, depending which one you believe. All of them claim to have their own foreign policy, their own defense policy, their own monetary policy. They have ministers for each of those. Some say they are with the central government, some are against it. And the State Department welcomes them as a legitimate stakeholders. Today we have 40 or 25. Tomorrow we will have 100. Now the question is, of course, when you look at it from the economic perspective, depending what theory you subscribe to, if you are in the mindset of post 9/11 or post Iraq war or what have you, where a lot of the private securities and quick hit economic and companies, their interest, of course, this is the best thing that could happen. Because each of those entities can literally sign up with any company that they want right now for any deal without having to get any permission from the central government. Now one may say, what's wrong with that? That's a win-win situation. People can come from outside, whether they are a private security company or what have you, or one of those people who are in the business of economic exploitation, they can still bring success to the locals. And that's a very good argument. But just think about this. Somalia since 1963, I think when that report was done, and recently it was unclassified, had the second highest deposit of uranium. Imagine a local entity that signs with some kind of mercenary group to mine uranium in Somalia. What prevents them from creating the worst disaster? Forget about the other things that they can do with the nuclear and the uranium in the market. Imagine that. That is what now is happening. Security is pigeonholed. Every group is entitled to get their own security. There is no national security. There is no even serious effort to build the 10,000 soldiers that are said that TFG has. I'll give you an example. Their salary is $100 a month. We are grateful that the U.S. pays $6,100 out of those total number of the soldiers. They receive $100 a month. Total of what? $610,000 a month that the U.S. pays. The rest is paid by Italy. Any one of them gets injured is taken out of that list. They don't get paid. The government has to come up with the payment. Now compare that much investment in one of the most volatile areas in the world versus Iraq, Afghanistan, and all the other places where all the dollars go to. And then you question and say, how serious is this policy in building the central government and making it a viable means to provide security? And this is the conversation that we have with the state. Friends can have difference of opinion, can we still remain to be good friends. But we sure are different. We see differently in this policy. This policy is neither good for Somalia nor is it good for the U.S. Because what you can expect, you can expect wars. We're just seeing a glimpse. In October 2010, I wrote about that article and what's to expect. And so did many in the audience. I know Professor Samatar spoke about it. I know Professor Weinstein spoke about it. I know Sadia, and there are so many different people that I see in this audience who spoke against this policy. And what we were warning against is really happening right now. then it would be a matter of semantics if we're not getting on the same page as to how dangerous this is. It's not a bad policy. It is a dangerous policy. If you want to stabilize that region, if you want to stabilize Somalia, this is not a policy that's good. I'll leave it at that and I'll answer the rest of my questions. Thank you.